Welcome to Taxpayer Alert. This is the 43rd or 44th episode, and we're starting to get better. It's a slow process. But we're delighted that this time to introduce our guest. My name is Al Segalla, President of Calaveras County Taxpayer Association. I'll be your host. And our guest we're just delighted to have with us is David Tunno, Planning Commissioner. David, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Good to be here.
All right. You're quite a talented person. And you always...
That's an auspicious start.
You always surprise me with more knowledge, and especially along the solution lines. You've got a good mind. I've watched you in the Planning Commission, and you've done so much good there. It's particularly in protecting property rights, which our organization is very much excited about. But a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your background. We know you drive a motorcycle.
No, that's pretty much it. The short version is that I grew up in different states because we were a military family, Marine Corps. So Hawaii, Florida, Southern California, the usual places. But I was born in Oregon and grew up there, grew up on a farm for the most part. Was in FFA and agriculture classes, and I was in school plays a lot. So when I went to college at the University of Portland, I chose theater as a major, and I was secondary education also. So I became a high school teacher for a while in that subject area. Worst job I ever had. Have so much respect for teachers that can stick it out and not go crazy over in their career. So I went back and got a master's degree in communications, doing the productions like you're seeing here, like you're part of, and worked for the Oregon State University in that capacity. I was a radio news announcer for a while, and then I worked for many years for a utility company in Portland called Northwest Natural Gas, making video productions and giving speeches and doing a lot of PR type stuff. From there, I came back to California and ended up being a trial consultant, which at the time I applied for the job, didn't know what it was. But they wanted somebody with my background and my degrees, and it became it actually was a witness preparation coach. So if you're going to take the stand in a case, your lawyer wants you to know how to behave in front of a jury. So I would teach people how to do that using basic communication techniques. And then from there it grew into doing the what people have become familiar with as mock trials. Mm-hmm. Jury consultants do mock trials to find out what it is that jurors like or dislike about a case, how they, if they were sitting as a juror, how would they make up their mind based upon what facts, what sticks, what doesn't stick, what themes work, what themes don't work, etc. And what would be good jurors and what would be bad jurors for a particular case. A lot of public opinion research, the science of public opinion research that goes into that work. So I learned all of that, and the production of videotapes for trial and animations and graphics, which I took with me from my previous work, and went out on my own after 4 years and did that. I've been doing that ever since. And I'm just now closing out my career so that I can finally call myself a retired person.
Well, you're far from retired, the amount of work you've been doing.
Well, that seems to be the case. I don't know, retirement is in quotes, but I want to, I don't know, it's just time for something else, do something else with my life. And so I had time to be a planning commissioner. It does take a lot of time. Yeah. So when that opportunity came up and I was asked, I jumped in.
You did a report on the FEMA flood issue, and it was so well done. You had graphics there showing a little stream bed and what was happening. Where people were being required to get flood insurance when there's no possibility of any flood. And you expose this thing, and then we put it on our taxpayer website, and it went nationwide,
Yeah.
and it really did some good.
Well, I got calls and emails from people all over the nation on that article. They're having, probably they were Googling FEMA insurance or FEMA problems or something on the internet, and up popped the article from your website.
Yeah.
And it was copied and put on other websites. It was picked up by some other FEMA advocates.
Right.
There's a guy back east who is the head of an organization called Stop FEMA Now.
Right.
So he picked it up and he's running with it. And there's another guy up in Minnesota who spread it around to congressmen and senators. And there was another guy in Oklahoma did the same thing. So it went crazy. You're right.
Well, the crazy thing, it may have went crazy, but it really helped a lot of people because it brought about change.
Well, you never know what the effect of it is, but it certainly made people aware. If you read the article, you'll know that it was a scam, in my opinion. It was a scam from the beginning that FEMA wanted to grab as many people as possible, property owners as possible, and force them to buy flood insurance who did not need it.
Right.
And they did so.
No risk.
No risk. So it was all found money for FEMA.
Right.
And it went to pay for FEMA losses in other areas.
Right.
The Katrina hurricane,
Right.
and other bad bets that FEMA has made over the years. And they were something, at the time of the article, and that was 2010, at the time of the article, they were $18 billion in debt to the federal government because they're supposed to be a self-sustaining entity.
Yeah.
They had lost all this money, and they were trying to recoup it. So this was their scheme. That's why I called it the FEMA scheme.
And that's not all you've been doing. You also got involved with CalPERS and the taxpayer ripoff of unfunded liabilities, and you even organized and went to our congressman, our state representative. Our state representative, and try to get some change there, and expose it. And of course, we try to help as best we could with the Taxpayer Association. And
well, it's a huge issue. I would estimate it's the biggest financial issue that the county faces.
right,
Because the unfunded liability that we have is substantial. The last I heard was about $20 million. For a county our size, that's a lot. That's many multiples of our revenue,
Right.
And so it just keeps going because the system keeps making it grow.
Right.
And the basic problem with CalPERS retirement plan is that it's a defined pension benefit.
right,
No matter how much the fund grows or doesn't grow by virtue of the investments, the individual gets the same amount of money, gets a set amount of money per month for the rest of their life upon retirement.
defined benefits.
Defined benefits.
Right.
As opposed to a 401k plan or an IRA such as I have, I put my money into it. I try to make it grow. If I'm successful, great. If I'm not, too bad for me.
Right.
It is what it is based upon my own efforts.
Defined contributions.
Defined contributions versus defined benefits. That's the huge difference.
Right.
Well, the public employees have these defined benefits, and that has what has bankrupt counties, cities, Vallejo, Stockton, San Bernardino. Other domino will fall, I believe.
Yeah.
But the problem really hasn't been solved yet. However, there's an initiative, I believe, begun by the mayor or former mayor of San Jose that will attempt to give public control over the CalPERS benefits. And I'm reading about it from an organization in Marin County that is very active in CalPERS. That is their one focus. That is their one purpose in life is to try to control these expenses because they've been burned too. They're in terrible trouble. So they're promoting this initiative that I don't know how it's going to get on the ballot. I presume signatures and whatnot. But basically, it gives the public control over these benefits. and what CalPERS can do. CalPERS has used strong-arm tactics against cities and counties when the city, for example, would say, we want to back out. We don't want CalPERS anymore. Well, we'll come up with some other retirement plan for our people. Thank you very much.
Right.
And then CalPERS hits them with whatever the unfunded liability is for
cash up front.
Cash up front, even though it's not owed for another 20, 30, 40 years.
Right.
Okay, so this initiative would stop them from doing that. So that has spooked a lot of counties and cities from opting out of CalPERS.
Right.
But it's not an issue that I've been able to pursue as much as I would like, because it's a huge issue, but other people are picking up the torch on that, and the baton, if you will, and carrying on. So it has to be solved, or everybody's going to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Virtually everyone.
We've been poking our county auditor, who's just great, Rebecca Cowan's, just wonderful, wonderful lady. And
I know Rebecca.
She's got her plate really full, and we're poking her to try to see if we can do some initiative in our county to start to turn this around.
Well, rather than wait for somebody else to come up with a solution, it makes sense that the county should be looking at options, because we just can't afford this.
We discovered a problem that the decision makers are also part of the system.
Well,
And so,
when the boards of supervisors and top administrators in the departments are all collecting the same benefits as the rank and file union members, maybe that's a problem.
who's representing the taxpayer?
Maybe that's a problem.
Yeah.
Could be.
That's interesting. There's so many things that you've been involved with. Now, before we leave, go into all the ups and downs with the Planning Commission and this Board of Supervisors, you've also done some looking at our system of justice, and you actually wrote a book. That's Fixing the Engine of Justice, Diagnosis and Repair of Our Jury System by David Tunno.
Well, of course, that came out of my trial consulting work. And I started writing that book right after the O.J. Simpson criminal trial, which everybody remembers because it was all over the TV. And I was so upset with the system, a breakdown of the system, I started writing notes. How can we change things for the better? And it started out as an article, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And over a 16-year period, I would collect stories. And the internet's a wonderful tool for that, right? You can find out what's going on all over the country, jury trials around the country. So I started collecting materials for a 16-year period, articles and books and read books and whatnot that are cited in the book in various topic areas where I see the problems. And so I wrote. It ended up finishing that book in 2012. Started it in 2005.
That's a few years.
No, I'm sorry, 1995, the O.J. Simpson trial, 1995. So that's how many years it took to finish it. And
10 years.
More than that. What is that?
95?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Without doing the math in my head, it's a lot. So that's, anyway, that's what's in there, and it's...
now, is the book on the internet?
Oh, sure. You can buy it on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com, sure.
And so all they need to do is put probably the word Tunno.
Well, yeah, they could...
Justice and Tunno. Huh?
They can Google David Tunno, and they're going to find, a link to the book.
Okay.
Which will be a link to my website. But my website's going to give you a preview of the book. It's going to give you excerpts from chapters and table of contents, so you can see what the book is about before you decide you like it or don't like it. And you can read quite a bit about the book on the internet. And then it'll give you a link to Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com, and you can get it in the e-book form. So that's very cheap. It's like $4 or $5 or something like that for e-book to read on your Kindle or your iPad or whatever.
Well, I read the book, and I'm not an expert in criminal justice, the criminal justice system, but I am concerned about the law and the function of the law, and I found the book very interesting.
Well, it's not just the criminal system; it's the civil system too. And in fact,
the jury system.
The jury system, of course, is for both civil and criminal. And most of the real juice, by the way, in the legal world is on the civil side. You'd be surprised.
It's been, there's an article that I shared, I hope I shared with you, but maybe I didn't. It's a short article. It talks about our common law heritage. And this has to do with common law and how common law actually is the one form of law that respects individual rights. The other type of law, which is regulatory law, it's ever what the rulers say. There's no connection, there's no historical connection to rights of any kind.
Well, a lot of it is based on, actually the principles are based on not just the Magna Carta, but it goes back quite a bit further than that.
Yeah.
I discuss Magna Carta in my book because a lot of people think that our Constitution is based on the Magna Carta. It is not.
No, it's not.
It's not even, a little bit here and there, the basic concept, but the Magna Carta was a key document in the world history,
right.
But it ain't our Constitution.
No.
And our Constitution is a whole lot better than the Magna Carta.
Yeah, it's what one of the things we do, we try to promote the Constitution. We've had several contests for kids making Constitution essay contests, and then we've had a kind of a formal award ceremony, and we're trying to promote that. And hopefully with the veterans and maybe some other groups that care about the Constitution, we might be able to do more of that. That's what we're looking forward to.
Well, there's a fantastic book that I read just this last spring called The 2,000-Year Leap.
Yes.
And it talks about the Founding Fathers,
yes,
and how they came up with, how they wrote the Constitution, what thought processes went into that, what studies went into that,
yeah.
And it is amazing. So if you can get the kids to read that, it might be a little highbrow for them, but it's written in a form that I think at least high school students could appreciate, and it's an eye-opener. It is wonderful.
I've read that, and it is good. And there is a version of the Constitution that has interesting facts in it, and so we've ordered a number of copies of those, and we provide those. It's the best we've seen, where you could even attorneys buy it because it gives the 20 most referred to Supreme Court decisions.
Oh, great. I've got a copy of the Constitution which has little note pages in it.
Yeah.
This is how this amendment was made. This is what they meant by this.
It might be the same book.
It's great.
It's a pocket book?
It's the only one I refer to because I like the expert to tell me what the origin of that amendment was and the history of it.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, I think we can have a better future. Things may get worse before they get better. But if we're more likely to emerge as a free society, and our kids can live in a free society, with more people being aware of the Constitution.
Well, that's an interesting way of phrasing it. We might emerge as a free society,
yeah,
when in fact we were supposed to be that to begin with, right? We might get back to a free society, would be a better way to put it.
Yeah, that's true. That's assuming that we're moving in the opposite direction now.
I agree. I agree.
Okay, now we've covered some of the things you've been doing, and of course the biggest thing you're doing now is a huge job, and this is being a planning commissioner. How much study do you have to do to get ready for a meeting, a planning commissioner meeting?
Funny you should ask. I brought with me a prop.
There it is.
Before every meeting, the planning commissioners get a packet from the planning department. Here's the material for your meeting next Thursday, and I get it on Friday before. And sometimes they're yay thick.
Yeah.
But for the last meeting, I don't remember if you were there or not, but for the last meeting, this was the packet of materials that we needed to know before for the decisions that we were going to make. Most of this is printed on both sides with many hundreds of pages. Now, that's because in this particular meeting, there were a couple of really big issues. One was the asphalt plant that's proposed for Valley Springs area, and another is the general plan. Let's see, what were the issues here? Asphalt plant. Oh, and a road intersection controversy over whether or not the guy should have to pay for it. So there's a lot of paperwork for that particular meeting. And those were, two big issues. And we've got general plan issues that are very hotly contested.
Right.
And so there's a lot of work, the many, many hours of work that goes into all of our meetings, which are now lasting all day long.
Right.
And instead of 2 meetings a month, there's 3 or 4.
one of the comments that that has been made is that the Planning Commission has become alive, and it's really looking at closely what they're voting on, and on the general plan, they're looking at every paragraph, its meaning, and trying to protect the property rights of the people.
Well,
and
we're certainly trying to do that.
This is unheard of. For years and years and years, this has not been done.
Well, thank you, but it's not just about protecting property rights. It's about what makes sense in a general plan.
Right.
And maybe you agree with me that a general plan should be general.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
A lot of people want it to be very specific.
Right.
I would like to see a general plan that's flexible.
Right.
Several people agree with me.
We do too.
Because a general plan is supposed to last for 20 years or more. Well, I don't see how it can last for 20 years or more if it's very rigid.
Right.
The more rigid you make it, and the more specific you make it, the more likely it is to be obsolete, because it's hard to predict 20 years out.
And in the meantime, hurting people. Anytime that a person can't use their property the way they want to without harming their neighbors, they're hurt.
Well, you could put it that way. That's a little bit broader than I would put it. When we buy a piece of property, this is my piece of property
maybe more
that I
emotional.
bought. It's we buy the rights that go with it.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
We don't buy an unlimited list of rights.
No.
We buy these rights.
Right.
Okay. So we can do with our property what is permitted by those particular rights.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there's a long list of things that we can do with it, and sometimes a very short list.
Right.
The goal of the Planning Commission, or the job of the Planning Commission and the Planning Department, is to come up with a plan for the county that makes sense,
Right.
looking as far into the future as we think we can look, which is about 20 years, and that's supposed to be the life of a general plan. And in my input into that will be, again, to make it as general as possible and as flexible as possible,
Right.
so that people aren't pigeonholed, property aren't pigeonholed so tightly that you can only do this one thing with it. And that we allow for the public to bring a better idea
Right.
to the fore
Yeah.
than we might have had.
Yeah. And especially the people that are responsible for the consequences, like the property owner.
That's right, and we have to allow the free market to exercise some degree of control
Right.
over what happens, because it's the free market that generates these possibilities.
Yeah.
The county doesn't create jobs, for example.
No.
Private enterprise creates jobs. So when we say we want to do something, we want to create jobs, we're not creating a darn thing. We just need to get out of the way of the people who do, and give them the opportunity to do it.
Suppose a manufacturer wants to bring a plant, hiring many, many people, maybe over 1,000 people, and if we didn't have flexibility in our zoning structure and in our general plan, can you imagine how difficult it would be to have the zoning changes around that facility that's needed for residential and commercial and the other things that are needed to help to make that more feasible? And if you had to go years and years to go through a process because it's so rigid, that you would lose the manufacturer that goes elsewhere.
Well, they're free to go wherever they want to, is the point you're trying to make.
Yeah.
Now, a project on the scale you're talking about is maybe not so typical of what would happen in Calaveras County. But just for instance, if someone wanted to bring such a project to Calaveras County and found that there's not enough of this purple zone, the industrial zone, to accommodate me, can I have this other little chunk here?
Yes.
Well, we've got to be flexible enough to say, let's
make it work.
Let's try to make it work rather than try to stand in the person's way.
Right.
If we can't make it work, we can't make it work.
Right.
But if we can and it's reasonable, the big word here, most important word for me is reasonable.
Right.
Then let's do that.
We kind of look, does it hurt the neighbors? Does it hurt the public? If the answer is no, hey, looks like it could be feasible.
Well, and hurting, whatever that is, someone can claim they're hurt when they're not, that's an unreasonable position.
Right.
So being reasonable solves a lot of problems. And having not just a general plan that's flexible, but having policies of cooperativeness, with landowners and
Yeah.
commercial interests and industrial interests and whatnot. So having policies that are at work within the departments is very important.
One of the commissioners had something to say, and he said 2 words, regulatory swamp. And he was attacked for using those words. However, that seems to define what the essence of our problem is.
I don't have a problem with the phrase, and I was there when it was uttered.
Yeah.
And no, I think that's an apt description of what some applicants have to go through to get something done in the county.
Right.
And it's not all the county's fault. Some of it's the state.
Right.
But where we can push back, we ought to, look at the
Yeah.
possibilities of pushing back, and let's not have the county be the problem. If there's going to be a problem, let's not have it be us.
Can we discuss the asphalt issue in
In a general sort of way, we
terms?
can, because
I know
there's
you're
limits to what
elected-
I can talk about.
Yeah, you're
Yeah, sure.
elected representative, so that you're limited into some topics that you can discuss.
Appointed, not elected, but
Well,
in
appointed,
this
okay.
sense, it's the same thing.
Yeah. In the asphalt issue, initially our group was concerned because we read in the newspaper some really horrible things about this stuff is a pollutant and it seemed like a little over the top, but anyway, it was only quite a few weeks later we discovered that it's not. It's not a pollutant. It's used everywhere. It's used to line water reservoirs. And if it were a pollutant, who would ever do that? Who would pave parking lots in hospitals with asphalt if it was a pollutant? It really added up. The common sense view of this really added up. But what happened, I think, initially is that the media only heard one side at the beginning. And it just took off like wildfire. Even caught us for a short time, but we snapped out of it. But we've spent so many hours in planning commission meetings, board of supervisors meetings, trying to bring reason to this process, and it's still going on. It's not over yet. And
True. What I can talk about,
yeah,
and what I think is important for the people to understand, is that the Planning Commission has been asked to make some decisions.
right,
The first decision we were asked to make was whether or not the asphalt zone, the asphalt plant, or an asphalt plant, fit within the M2 zone as it's written in our county codes.
right,
Okay, and it was the planning director's opinion that it did.
yeah,
And he stated his reasons for it, definitions of words,
Yeah.
historic uses, et cetera, et cetera.
right.
And we agreed with him. Okay? And it was a very narrow issue.
With
Now-
1 minute left, what do you see happening coming ahead?
Well, the general plan is going to take a number of months, actually between now and about the end of next year. It's a very slow process. The elements come to the commission, we make our edits. When we get something that we like, element by element, it goes to the Board of Supervisors. They do the same thing. Takes a long time. Then it goes back to the Planning Department for various reviews by them, and an EIR has to be written, and it has to be made compatible, internally compatible. A lot of work from the Planning Department, so that's why the process takes so long.
How big will that stack be?
I've got a half-ton truck, and I won't be able to hold it all.
We want to thank you for being our guest. And I'm Al Segalla, Calaveras County Taxpayer Association. Go to our website at calaveраstaxpayers.org. We have a lot of information there. See you next time.